The endless stalemate, the galaxy burned with 15 years of unending warfare. Stars that had once been beacons of trade and prosperity now served as graveyards for countless starships. The Zephyrian Empire and the coalition of free worlds had locked themselves in a conflict so brutal and exhausting that entire star systems had been reduced to rubble. Yet neither side could claim victory. Admiral Kekstar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Sovereignty, watching another battle unfold through the viewscreen. His reptilian features were scarred from decades of combat, and his golden eyes held the weariness of a warrior who had seen too much death. The Zephyrians prided themselves on their military precision and technological superiority. Their ships were works of art, sleek and deadly, powered by antimatter cores that could level entire planets. Across the battlefield, Commander Velena of the Coalition forces observed the same engagement from her command vessel. The Liberty's Edge, her blue-skinned Altarian physiology, allowed her to process tactical information at superhuman speeds, while her crystalline implants enhanced her natural telepathic abilities. The Coalition fought for freedom and democracy, using swarm tactics and guerrilla warfare to counter the Empire's technological advantages. Both commanders knew this battle would end like all the others. Ships would be destroyed, lives would be lost, and tomorrow they would fight again. The war had become a grinding stalemate that consumed resources faster than either side could replace them. Entire generations had grown up knowing nothing but conflict. The Zephyrian Empire controlled the galactic core, with its ancient worlds and established trade routes. Their society was built on hierarchy and order, with the Emperor's word being absolute law. They possessed the most advanced technology in the galaxy, including weapons that could manipulate matter at the quantum level and shields that could withstand the fury of dying stars. Their military doctrine emphasized overwhelming force and tactical superiority. The Coalition of Free Worlds held the Outer Rim territories, a collection of younger civilizations united by their desire for independence. They included the telepathic Altarians, the insectoid Krillians with their hive mind intelligence, and the gaseous Nebulans who existed as pure energy. Their strength lay in diversity and adaptability, using unconventional tactics that frustrated the Empire's rigid military planning. The current engagement was typical of the war's pattern. Zephyrian dreadnoughts advanced in perfect formation, their plasma cannons carving through space with mathematical precision. Coalition fighters swarmed around them like angry insects, using hit-and-run tactics to exploit the larger ship's blind spots. Neither side could gain a decisive advantage. "Status report," Admiral Kekstar commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone born to rule. "Enemy casualties at 67% of initial force strength," reported his tactical officer. "Our losses stand at 41%. The Coalition is beginning their standard withdrawal pattern." Kekstar nodded grimly. Another Pyrrhic victory that brought them no closer to ending this war. His empire was bleeding resources and manpower, just as the Coalition was. Both sides had explored every possible strategy, from massive fleet engagements to precision strikes on key installations. Nothing worked. Meanwhile, on the Liberty's Edge, Commander Velena received her own damage reports. Her telepathic abilities allowed her to sense the emotional state of her crew, feeling their exhaustion and growing despair. They were tired of fighting, tired of dying for a war that seemed to have no end. "Commence withdrawal to Rally Point 7, she ordered. Her voice carried the musical tones typical of her species, but underneath lay steel forged by years of combat. "Signal all ships to maintain formation." As the Coalition fleet retreated into hyperspace, Velena couldn't shake the feeling that they were trapped in an endless cycle. The war had become its own entity, consuming everything in its path while producing nothing but more conflict. Both sides had tried negotiation, but their fundamental differences made peace impossible. The Empire demanded submission, While the Coalition would never surrender their freedom, it was during this dark period that something unprecedented happened. A new species made contact with both warring factions simultaneously. They called themselves humans, and they came from a small blue planet in a previously unexplored sector. Their first diplomatic message was broadcast to both the Empire and the Coalition with startling simplicity. We are the people of Earth, and we wish to help end your war. The message caused confusion throughout both military hierarchies. Admiral Kekstar studied the intelligence reports about these newcomers with growing bewilderment. The humans possessed crude technology by galactic standards. Their ships were barely capable of faster-than-light travel. Their weapons were primitive, kinetic projectiles, and their lifespans were incredibly short by most species measurements. They want to mediate between us? Kekstar asked his intelligence chief. What could such a primitive species possibly offer? Commander Vellana received similar reports and had similar questions. The humans appeared to be a young species that had only recently developed space travel. They had no great military might, no advanced technology, and no apparent advantage that would make them valuable allies. Yet something about their message intrigued her. The human delegation that arrived at the Chi neutral space station where preliminary talks would be held was small and unremarkable. Dr. Elena Martinez, their lead diplomat, was a middle-aged woman with graying hair and kind eyes. Captain David Chun commanded their escort ship, a boxy vessel that looked more like a cargo hauler than a military craft. We appreciate both factions agreeing to meet with us, Dr. Martinez said as she addressed the assembled representatives. Her voice was warm, but carried an underlying strength that surprised the alien delegates. We understand that your war has been devastating for both sides. Admiral Kekstar studied the human with his predatory gaze. With respect, Doctor, your species lacks the military capability to influence this conflict. What exactly do you propose? Doctor. Martinez smiled, an expression that seemed to carry hidden depths. We don't propose to fight your war for you, Admiral. We propose to help you understand why it can't be won. The Zephyrian officer's scales rippled with irritation. The war cannot be won because our enemies refuse to accept the natural order of the galaxy. The Empire brings stability and progress to chaos. Commander Vellana's crystalline implants flashed with indignation. The war continues because the Empire seeks to enslave free peoples. We fight for the right to determine our own destiny. Captain. Chun leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. Both of you are right, and both of you are wrong. You're fighting the same war for different reasons, but you're not fighting each other anymore. You're fighting the war itself. The alien delegates looked at him with confusion. Wars were fought between enemies with conflicting goals. How could they be fighting the war itself? Asterisk Dr. Martinez activated a holographic display that showed battle. Statistics from the past 5 years. Look at your casualty reports, your resource expenditure, your tactical assessments. You're not trying to defeat each other anymore. You're trying to prove that you can continue fighting. The data was undeniable. Both sides had multiple opportunities to deliver decisive blows, but they had consistently chosen prolonged engagements over quick victories. Their strategies had evolved to maintain the conflict rather than end it. The war has become your purpose, Dr. Martinez continued. Your economies are built around it, your societies are organized for it, and your identities are defined by it. Ending the war means facing the question of what comes next, and that terrifies both of you more than continuing to fight. Admiral Kekstar's golden eyes narrowed. You suggest we desire this conflict? I suggest you fear peace more than war, Captain Chun replied. The Empire is afraid that without an external enemy, your people might question the need for absolute authority. The Coalition fears that without a common threat, your member species might drift apart. Commander Vellana felt a chill as she realized the truth in the humans' words. The war had indeed become the foundation of their society. Coalition worlds that had been bitter rivals before the conflict were now united by their shared struggle. The Empire used the external threat to justify policies that might otherwise be questioned. "Even if your assessment is correct," Kekstar said carefully, "what solution do you propose? We cannot simply cease hostilities without addressing our fundamental differences." Dr. Martinez's smile returned, and this time it held a hint of something the aliens couldn't quite identify. "We propose to show you what humans learned long ago. The most powerful weapon in the universe isn't technology or military might, it's understanding." The human delegation produced a small device and placed it on the conference table. It appeared to be nothing more than a simple communications array, far less sophisticated than anything the advanced alien civilizations used. "This is our contribution to ending your war," Captain Sean explained. "It's not a weapon in any traditional sense. It's something much more dangerous to conflict. It's a tool for genuine communication." The aliens stared at the primitive device with skepticism. How could such crude technology accomplish what their most advanced systems had failed to achieve? "Your species communicate through official channels, military protocols, and diplomatic formalities," Dr. Martinez explained. "You exchange information, but you don't share understanding. This device bypasses all of that." Commander Vellana leaned forward, her telepathic abilities detecting something unusual about the human emotions. There was confidence there, but also compassion and hope. These were not the emotions of beings seeking military advantage. "What exactly does it do?" she asked. "It allows individuals to share memories, experiences, and emotions directly, Captain," Chun replied. "Not mind reading or telepathic control, but genuine empathy. When you understand why your enemy fights, truly understand it, conflict becomes much more difficult to maintain." Admiral Kekstar's military instincts rebelled against the idea. "You ask us to reveal our thoughts to our enemies? This could be an elaborate intelligence-gathering operation." Dr. Martinez nodded understanding. "Your suspicion is natural, Admiral. But consider this. What military secrets could be more devastating than the ones you already know about each other? You've been fighting this war for 15 years. You know each other's capabilities, tactics, and strategies better than your own." The truth of her words was uncomfortable. Both sides had indeed studied their enemies exhaustively. The stalemate existed not because of unknown factors, but because both factions had become too predictable to each other. "The device works both ways," Captain Sean added. "If you're going to understand your enemy's perspective, they'll understand yours as well. It requires trust from both sides." The meeting continued for hours, with both sides raising objections and concerns. The humans patiently addressed each point, never pushing, but always offering new perspectives. They spoke of Earth's own history of warfare, of conflicts that had seemed eternal until new ways of thinking emerged. As the session concluded, both Admiral Kekstar and Commander Vellana found themselves with more questions than answers. The humans had offered something unprecedented, a path to understanding that didn't require victory or defeat. But could such a thing actually work? The human solution. 3 weeks after the initial meeting, a remarkable transformation began across the galaxy. The humans had established what they called understanding centers on neutral worlds throughout both Empire and Coalition space. These facilities were staffed by human psychologists, anthropologists, and philosophers. But their most important feature was the simple communication devices Dr. Martinez had demonstrated. The first volunteers were individuals from both sides who had lost everything to the war. Captain Zorith of the Zephyrian Navy had watched his home world burn during a Coalition raid. Lieutenant Karanon of the Coalition forces had seen her entire unit wiped out by Empire orbital bombardment. Both carried hatred and grief that defined their existence. Dr. Alina Martinez personally oversaw their first session at the Understanding Center on the neutral world of Haven Prime. The facility itself was deliberately simple, designed to feel welcoming rather than clinical. Soft lighting, comfortable seating, and earth plants created an atmosphere of peace that both species found oddly soothing. I want you both to understand that this process is voluntary, Dr. Martinez explained as the two officers sat across from each other. The device will only share what you choose to share. It cannot access private thoughts or hidden memories without your consent. Captain Zoreth studied his coalition counterpart with barely contained hostility. His reptilian features were tense, scales shifted to their combat coloration. What is the purpose of this exercise? To make me sympathize with those who murdered my family. Lieutenant Chironon's blue skin had darkened with her own anger. Her crystalline implants pulsed with emotional energy. My unit died because of empire. Aggression. I have no desire to understand the motivations of conquerors. Dr. Martinez nodded with understanding. Both of you have every right to your anger. The question is whether that anger is serving you or destroying you. When did you last sleep without nightmares? When did you last experience joy that wasn't overshadowed by thoughts of revenge? The question hit both officers harder than they expected. Neither could remember a time when the war hadn't dominated their thoughts. Their hatred had become their entire identity. The device will let you share a single memory, Captain David Chun explained as he entered the room. Not your worst memory or your most painful experience, but a moment that explains who you were before the war defined you. Captain Zoreth was the first to agree, perhaps because his pride wouldn't let him appear weak in front of an enemy. He placed his scaled hand on the communication device and thought of his daughter's first steps, taken in the garden of their family home on Zephyr Prime. The memory flowed through the device and into Chironon's consciousness. The coalition officer experienced the moment as if she had lived it herself. She felt Zoreth's joy as his child took those wobbly steps, heard his laughter echoing through their home, and understood the love that had motivated everything he did. This wasn't the mind of a bloodthirsty conqueror, but of a father who had cherished his family. When it was her turn, Chironon shared a memory of her graduation from the Coalition Academy. She had been the first member of her species to achieve top honors, and her family had traveled across the galaxy to witness the ceremony. Through the device, Zoreth experienced her pride, her family's joy, and her genuine desire to protect the freedom that made such achievements possible. For several minutes after the connection ended, both officers sat in silence. The anger hadn't disappeared, but it was no longer the only emotion they felt. They had seen each other as individuals rather than symbols of enemy factions. I still cannot forgive what happened to my world, Zoreth said quietly. And I cannot forget my fallen comrades, Chironon replied. Dr. Martinez leaned forward. We're not asking you to forget or forgive. We're asking you to remember that your enemy is also someone who has lost everything they loved. Word of these. Sessions spread through both military hierarchies, creating controversy and curiosity in equal measure. Some condemned the process as weakness or treason, while others began to volunteer for their own sessions. The humans never pushed or demanded participation, simply made the opportunity available. Admiral Kextar found himself monitoring reports from the Understanding centers with growing unease. His intelligence officers reported that soldiers who participated in the sessions showed decreased aggressive behavior and increased reluctance to engage in combat operations. From a military standpoint, this was disastrous. They're undermining our war effort, complained General Vextar, one of the Admiral's most trusted subordinates. These humans claim to want peace, but they're systematically weakening our force's combat effectiveness. Commander Velana faced similar concerns from her own staff. Coalition fighters who had experienced the sharing process were beginning to question orders that would result in civilian casualties. Some had even requested transfers to non-combat positions. "Perhaps that's exactly what we need," suggested her aide, a young Eltarian named Genter. "Maybe reduced aggression is not a weakness, but a strength we haven't recognized." Both commanders found themselves drawn to visit the understanding centers, not as participants, but as observers. They watched as enemies sat together, sharing experiences and finding common ground. They saw hardened warriors discover that their opponents were driven by the same basic needs: security for their families, freedom from fear, and hope for a better future. The breakthrough came when Dr. Martinez proposed something unprecedented: a session between Admiral Kekstar and Commander Vellana themselves. The suggestion was met with immediate resistance from both sides. "Absolutely not," General Vextar declared. "The Admiral cannot expose strategic information to enemy telepaths." Colonel Morvan of the Coalition was equally opposed. "Our commander's knowledge of fleet movements and battle plans cannot be compromised." Dr. Martinez met with both leaders separately, her approach patient but persistent. "What strategic secrets do you actually have that the other side doesn't already know? You've been fighting each other for 15 years. Your tactics, your capabilities, your resources, all of this is already known to your enemies." Captain Chun supported her argument with detailed analysis. "Your fleets have been monitoring each other constantly. Every major engagement provides intelligence about capabilities and strategies. The stalemate exists because you know each other too well, not because you know too little." Admiral Kekstar was the first to agree, his decision driven partly by curiosity and partly by the warrior's instinct to face any challenge directly. Commander Vellana agreed shortly afterward, her telepathic abilities having detected genuine sincerity in the human proposals. The session took place on Haven Prime, with representatives from both factions present as witnesses. The galaxy's attention focused on this unprecedented meeting between the war's two primary architects. "I want both of you to understand, Doctor," Martinez began, "that this session will likely be the most difficult thing either of you has ever done. Not because of any danger, but because you'll see your enemy as a person rather than a symbol." The Admiral and Commander sat across from each other, separated by 15 years of conflict and the deaths of billions. When they placed their hands on the communication device, the shared memory that flowed between them came as a surprise to everyone present. Neither leader chose to share a moment of triumph or victory. Instead, Admiral Kekstar offered the memory of standing in his ship's medical bay, surrounded by wounded soldiers from both sides. The Empire's medical protocols required treating enemy wounded with the same care as their own forces, and he had watched his own medical staff working desperately to save Coalition lives. Commander Vellana shared a memory of similar nature, a moment when her ships had rescued survivors from a destroyed Zephyrian vessel. She had ordered her crews to risk their own safety pulling Imperial soldiers from the wreckage, following Coalition principles that valued all sentient life. Both leaders experienced the other's compassion, their genuine desire to minimize suffering even in the midst of war. They discovered that despite their opposing ideologies, they shared fundamental beliefs about the value of life and the responsibility of command. When the connection ended, the room remained silent for several minutes. Both the Admiral and Commander sat with their heads bowed, processing emotions they had not allowed themselves to feel for years. "Your people believe in order through strength," Vellana said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Your people believe in strength through unity." Kekstar replied with equal quietness. Dr. Martinez spoke into the profound silence. "And both of you believe that your people deserve to live without fear. That's not a contradiction. That's the foundation for peace." The transformation that followed was neither instant nor easy. Both military hierarchies resisted the implications of their leaders' shared experience. Hardliners on both sides accused their commanders of weakness and betrayal. Some factions attempted to continue the war independently, but without unified command, their efforts were quickly contained. Captain Chun worked with military strategists from both sides to develop what they called de-escalation protocols. Instead of seeking military victory, both fleets began coordinating their withdrawal from contested systems. Weapons remained ready, but engagement rules shifted from destroy the enemy to prevent civilian casualties. The humans revealed their true genius in the months that followed. They had never intended to impose peace through superior firepower or diplomatic pressure. Instead, they had used humanity's greatest weapon, the ability to see beyond immediate differences and find common ground. Dr. Martinez explained their approach during a joint assembly of Empire and Coalition leaders. Every species in the galaxy has developed sophisticated ways to fight and destroy. Humans learned something different. We learned that understanding your enemy's pain makes it much harder to add to that pain. The war didn't end with a treaty or surrender. It simply faded away as both sides discovered that they had more to gain through cooperation than conflict. The Zephyrian Empire's advanced technology, combined with the Coalition's diverse perspectives, created innovations that benefited all species. Admiral Kekstar and Commander Villana became unlikely partners in establishing the Galactic Peace Corps, an organization dedicated to resolving conflicts before they escalated to warfare. They used the human understanding centers as a model, spreading the technology throughout the galaxy. Years later, as peace became the new normal, beings throughout the galaxy would remember the moment when a small, primitive species had accomplished what all their advanced civilizations could not. The humans had deployed their ultimate weapon, not against their enemies, but for them. They had weaponized empathy, understanding, and hope. The galaxy learned that day that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't the ability to destroy, but the courage to understand. And in that understanding, they found not just peace, but the foundation for a civilization greater than any they had imagined possible. The war was over, not because someone had won, but because everyone had chosen to stop fighting. And in that choice, they discovered that the real victory had always been waiting for them to claim it together.